This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. New Jersey's community colleges aligning education to build an innovative workforce. Find out how your business can join and benefit at njpathways.org. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, it's October, which means it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Here to discuss the importance of making sure everyone has the resources they need to be safe and secure online are, from Peapack-Gladstone Bank, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer Kevin Runyon, and Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer John Kowal. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
That's a pleasure.
You know, it occurred to me as I was doing the intro that maybe since you're the tech guys, we should have had Java instead of water in the lounge. But I apologize for that. We'll get that. We'll take care of it later. Before we get into the cybersecurity thing, let's talk about Peapack-Gladstone Bank. How long has the bank been in existence?
Sure. So we've been in business for 100 years. We
Wow.
just celebrated our 100-year anniversary last year in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
We're really excited about that. We're really excited about being around another 100 years to service our clients and our communities as well.
And I look forward to being there for all 100 years. All right, so that's great, Kevin. Let's talk about Cybersecurity Month. What is it, and why is it important that small businesses pay attention to it?
Well, back in 2004, the federal government started Cybersecurity Month, and they designated October as the month that they would put out information regarding current cyber-related incidents, threats, and how to protect yourself against those. So it's been building, as the years have gone on, and October is a great month for businesses and individuals to go out and look for that information, find out what the current threats are and how to protect themselves.
Yeah, it seems to me we hear more about cybersecurity because we're using so much of our technology so much more, and you got to be that much more protective. What would you say? Small or large businesses have to be more wary about the threats?
Well, you know, Bob, the reality is today, everyone's a target. You only hear about the largest companies and the largest attacks in the news, but small businesses are really starting to struggle with cybercrime. And I'll give you an example of how that happens, right? So you get those strange emails, those phishing emails, and they call them that because these attackers, they cast a very wide net.
Right.
There's tens of thousands of people, and they just need one person to bite. And if that's you, if you click that link, if you open that attachment, if you reply to the email, then you become the mark.
Right.
And they're going to put their full effort towards you.
Right.
That's a very tough position for a small business to be. And that's how businesses of all sizes, all shapes get targeted. This idea that my business is too small or my business is too uninteresting for a cyber attacker to bother with, we call that security by obscurity. That's no longer a reality.
Right.
That's why it's a very dangerous world.
Right. And they're like, who's looking at me, basically?
Right.
All right, so how important is it that small businesses take ownership of protecting themselves versus waiting for something to happen?
Yeah, it's very important that they take ownership. They can be attacked at any time, any place, and it could be devastating.
Right.
You've heard a lot about ransomware and how that can impact a customer. And mostly it's in the news about the larger companies, but the same things are happening with the smaller companies. And those type of attacks can cost those smaller companies hundreds of thousands of dollars and even put them out of business. So they have to be proactive and go out and understand where these attacks are coming from.
So small businesses have actually been put out of business because of ransomware.
Yeah, for sure. It happens all the time.
Wow.
I mean, the bad guy is getting $100,000 from a large company or a small company, it doesn't matter. And the small companies are easier targets.
Now, I will say these attackers, they do their research.
Yeah.
They will look at what size company you are, what you can uncomfortably afford. So it's not uncommon that they'll steal your files, they'll lock them up, and they'll try to sell you the key. And if you don't have that key, you're not getting your data back. And they're going to ask for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 from a small business. It could be devastating, but they know what they have. And we do recommend, if if companies are interested, they need to look at protect themselves with offline backups. Offline backups is really the premise of you have your data and you put it on a hard drive, you store it in a safe.
Right.
And that way, when your computer gets broken into, the attackers, they can't touch that. And you always have your data. They'll never be able to prevent you from accessing your data.
Right. How about in terms of, is there any other calls they can make? Like if it's something that's going to impact them financially, do they call the police? I mean, this is something major. This is theft. I mean, it's not just somebody stealing your data, it's stealing your money.
Well, we always recommend, definitely call the police. And as a bank, don't forget to call your bank too, especially if you're dealing with someone who is targeting your financial accounts, your personal information.
Right.
We'll take that abundance with caution with you,
Right.
and we'll make sure your accounts are safe. It's in our interest and it's in your interest.
Right.
But do call the police. Start with your local police. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the resources they have, the way they can direct you. But really what's important to know is that the FBI aggregates all criminal complaints on cybercrime. They deal with about 2,000 complaints a day, right?
Wow.
So
that's nationally?
Nationally.
Okay.
And so you may have just gotten scammed out of $100,000 or some fraud that hit you, and that could be absolutely devastating. But you are far, far, far from the biggest case that they're dealing with. That's why prevention is so important. That's why if you don't have cyber insurance, talk to your insurance provider about that and see what coverage you can get. Because you need to protect yourself. You need to own your cyber risk.
Some of the threats we always talk about, phishing. But then there's something called spear phishing. Do you guys know what that is? And how much of a threat is this?
Sure. So, I can talk a little bit about that. Spear phishing is, as John mentioned before, they'll cast a big net, with a phishing attempt. But then once they get someone hooked, they'll do a direct campaign against that person. They'll learn about you.
Right.
They'll direct certain things about you and get you to think that you're dealing with somebody that really understands you and you know.
So how do you stop it? Like, how can you look at an email and know that this is probably a phishing thing? What kind of things are you looking for?
Well, you want to look for red flags, right? And the number one red flag is urgency.
Right.
Open this attachment now, click this link, send this money. Fake legal threats, fake law enforcement demands. They're trying to get you to act quick and make a mistake.
Right.
Now, another important thing to look for is just something you weren't expecting. And that's overarching, right? You get an email from an old colleague. You get an email from a coworker who said, well, this is vague. This attachment is weird. Just give them a call. Make sure, was that really you? And I think you'll be surprised at the number of times they say, no, that wasn't me.
Yeah. Sometimes I get these phishing emails, and it's like some of them don't seem very realistic at all. But I'm wondering, I guess there are some that are pretty sophisticated in their approach, right? They can trick you pretty easily. Yeah,
sure. I mean, a perfect example is, a president of the bank sends you an email that says, I need you to wire out money today. Well, it could be that the president of your company got hacked, and then you're getting an email from a bad actor creating a sense of urgency for you to do something.
Right.
So, I mean, a good rule of thumb for every small business is if you're seeing something by email, always validate it, right? Don't react to it. It means picking up the phone, a little bit old school, and making sure that what you're doing is not going to be a costly mistake.
Yeah. What kind of things can businesses do to protect their finances?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Banks are a great resource. They offer a lot of services, things like positive pay and other services that can help protect your bank against fraud. But as John mentioned before, if you are a victim of a cyber event, call your bank. They're a great resource. We get on the phone with a lot of our customers that have experienced cyber events and to try to help them through that.
All right. What do you think, John?
Well, one of the biggest recommendations, and everyone, business and consumer, can go on online banking and do this today, is to set account alerts and account limits. So let's say you're a small business and you have an account. Well, I don't really ever see myself sending more than $10,000 in a single transaction out of this account. You should get a text and an email when that happens. Because if it's fraudulent, the quicker you know, the quicker you can tell the bank, the better we can respond and help you. You can also set limits. So that same account, you may want to say, well, I don't want any transaction over $20,000 going out the door. And I'll tell you, in my own online banking, I'll get an alert for every single transaction. It just sends me an email, I check it quick, but if there's any fraud, I will know immediately because I'll get an email on a transaction I didn't do.
So I'm wondering, as the years go on, do you hear of more cases of small businesses really being ripped off and they just don't know what to do?
Yeah, for sure. Small businesses are targeted every day. I mean, at our bank, every bank has businesses that are undergoing, a cyber event almost every single day. So helping them through those, because a lot of times they don't know the resources they should be using, steps they should be taking. And a real interesting statistic, if you're a small business and wonder why you have to be concerned, the FBI, they put out their 2021 cybercrime report, and $2.4 billion of cyber theft is attributed to small business just in 2021.
Wow.
So everyone's a target, so you have to be prepared.
So how about in terms of employers, what can they do to help employees from being susceptible to these challenges?
Well, you have to train them, and this is Cyber Month, so there's some great resources out there. But you also have to test them. There's this pervasive thought that it'll never happen to me. It's not only amongst businesses, small and medium, but amongst employees. So there's a great software out there where you can send these fake emails and see how they behave in an environment where the consequences are not there.
Right.
That not only trains them, but it keeps them on alert, for when the real thing comes in. And when it does, they might say, "Oh, is this one of those trainings?" And you'll say, "Well, no. This was a real thing, and thankfully you didn't respond to it."
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is actually happening here at NJBIA. We've used this software, and I feel like the training does help. Like sometimes it's like, I'm never going to fall from that. But there have been times or emails I'm looking and I'm like, I'm not so sure. Hey, could you make that? Did this happen? Should I give you? I'll give you a call. And you're like, no, that wasn't me. So.
It's important you mentioned that, Bob, because a lot of your audience might think, well, they're a bank, so of course they're testing their employees. They have this software, but this software is becoming very common in medium, small businesses as well. You can even make up your own little test against your employees too. Anything you can do to keep them on alert and say, whether it's training or the real deal, yes, this can happen to you, and so stay on guard.
John, another component of this is service providers. What should folks be asking of their service providers as it relates to cybersecurity?
Well, it's important first to find a provider that you can trust. And talk to your industry groups. A lot of these IT providers work in verticals. So you can talk to your colleagues at other businesses and say, who are you using? Who do you like? Because when you can trust someone, you can sit down with them and say, what services do I have? What would happen if we got hit with ransomware? If someone steals my password, what can they do with that?
Right.
And we're not just looking to check a box. We're not just looking for yes or no answers or, you'd be covered in that situation. We're looking for them to explain it to you in a way that you understand. Because at the end of the day, as we were discussing, you own your cyber risk. It's your business, it's your reputation, it's your money on the line when it comes to cybersecurity, and you want to make sure you understand what your provider is doing.
Yeah, you hit on the word reputation. You could be in business for 100 years and develop this reputation, and then it could be all gone in one day, one afternoon, right?
With the click of one button.
And Kevin, just in terms of, let's wrap it up. It's Cybersecurity Month. What do you recommend to the folks?
Yeah, so October is Cybersecurity Month. There's a lot of very good new information out on the internet through providers. As John mentioned, talk to your provider about it. Take some time during this month of October, learn about the current cybersecurity risk, educate yourself on how you protect yourself against them, and be diligent.
Very good. All right, folks. Well, this is great information. For more information for you folks out there, go to pgbank.com/security, and they have plenty of great tips. John Kowal, Kevin Runyon, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I'll be back right after these words.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first, that connects you to technology and each other, that's built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only officially authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, NJBIA recently held its annual Women Business Leaders Forum at a packed house in Atlantic City. And today we take you to highlights from a recent breakout session that focused on navigating double standards in the workplace. Have a look at an interesting discussion with our esteemed panelists.
So there's something called a double bind, which is often a catch-22 for many of us, where leaders are looked to be authoritative, to show up in a room and have a strong presence. At the same time, women sometimes need to be viewed as likable. And so, Geri, I'd be really interested to hear about how you've been able to represent your leader and marry those two.
So a lot of times if you're not smiling or you're just thinking or whatever, they tend to say you're moody, you're, not having a good day. But, a man is, discerning, he's thinking, he's, for women, it's much harder. So a lot of times, like I've learned to be slow down, because I can be very, very fast. And that comes off as abrasive, but not for a man. So I have to slow down sometimes, whether I'm on the phone or I'm talking face to face to someone. I have to say, slow down, smile every now and then, so they don't think, what the heck? It's difficult. And a lot of times, wherever I am, even if I'm talking, they talk over me. And I have a loud voice. Sometimes I don't need a mic, and I will not let them do that. I'll go, wait a minute. But that's the only way sometimes, because they will look, like she said, to a male first. I go on funerals, and I'm the one with all the checks, and they still go to the limo driver. And I'm like, I'll just wait patiently till they figure out who the funeral director is here.
I agree with both of them right here. When I go into a room, especially being in this position, the first thing that if I have a male with me, and usually he's reporting to me, they will talk to the man first. And they'll look, and like you said, I will patiently wait for them for a question to be asked where it has to be directed back to me. So I don't try to assert myself in the room. More or less, I just wait until I'm asked, but still let it be known that when I'm asked, or when a question is posed, that they directly have to come back to me, that I'm just making sure I give the full information so they realize that, okay, she's actually the person who we need to talk to, and this is the conversation that needs to be had between this person. But you kind of just have to just stay the course. There's always going to be men who see you in that light, but as long as you know your purpose and your value of being in the room and why you're there, you're really going to be fine.
So Gina, as a leader, how have you mentored others, men or women, to combat the double standard and encourage that behavior within the team?
Yeah, I think I try to help people find their voice and speak up for themselves, right? And I think that is for both men and women. And I think women are naturally where they might feel marginalized by a comment that someone else, perhaps a man that made to them. They don't try, they let others own their narrative instead of owning it for themselves. Don't let anyone speak on your behalf, and, be a good advocate when you feel like you're not being heard. I think with men, it's just being considerate of others. And a lot of times it's, we all have these generalizations that we pass on one another. Women are multitaskers, men are not. I mean, how many times do you hear that? And that's not necessarily true. I'm sure there are plenty of men that are excellent multitaskers, but I think we have these generalizations and we pass them along. And it's just to take a moment to stop and think, what are the best qualities of the individual, or what's something that, whether it's a male or female, that they can work on to enhance. And that's what I try to do. I find that, even within my own team, to look at the qualities. I always say, like, there are certain individuals that are great relationship builders, and I want that influence with others that are not great relationship builders. They tend to put their heads down and just get the work done. So it's kind of like coaching more than it is managing. You look, when you're coaching a team, you're looking for, the skills and the capabilities of each player, and you want to place them in the right position so that they can excel. It's the same thing when you're managing a team. You look for those qualities and you hope that it makes it easier for you as a leader, so that you're putting those people together so that they can help balance each other out and learn from each other's attributes.
So I encourage the girls and put them in awkward positions sometimes. And I say, if it helps, when you're on the phone, just pretend you're me. Because you hear me over and over, and if it makes you more comfortable to speak so that you can do it, then do it. And they become very good at it. And at the end, you know, because we're like this. We're this close in a small office. And I'll just say, it's the way you say it. And I'll just say it this way so it's less of a choice, so they understand what you want. And you're not asking for permission. You're asking but telling in the same form. So I encourage them that way, and I help them that way. And let me tell you, they call them all mini-me's now. But I also, because my husband works with me, we're all funeral directors. We're all equally, the women are probably more credentialed, like she said, because it's harder to be taken serious unless you are. So we have more education than most of the men in the room. And I have to remind him all the time. He'll come in and be like, can you take the garbage out? Can you clean the bathroom? They're no different than you, and they're working. If you notice it, do it. Don't come in and tell me the garbage is full. You saw it, you do it. You clean just like the rest of us. Just because we're females doesn't mean it's our job. And we clean before and after every funeral. So this is like, irks me. The garbage is as big as my tiny little Jordana. It's probably 5 feet, and it's halfway up her body. And you got to go across the parking lot to the garbage. And I look at him and I go, just keep going, move, you could take it. So that's how, I mean, I have to combat it every day because of that. I really do.
When you look back, you know, earlier in career and all the knowledge that you've gained and a lot of the advice, you know, we've been hearing from this panel today, you know, what do you wish you knew then that you know now to help kind of navigate the double standard?
I think what I would tell myself is what actually someone told me when I was first coming into the political arena, is that the phone calls you have to make, the person on the other end of the phone, especially when you're speaking to other elected officials, because if you notice in politics, one thing people like to do is flex their title and say, well, do you know who I am? And you have to remember at the end of the day, they put their pants on the same way you do. And that was probably the biggest impact I remember, that when I have to make the phone calls or sit at these meetings, that this person is no different than me. They're putting on their pants the same way I do, one leg at a time. So just keep that in the back of my mind and don't ever back down.
Absolutely.
I like to see them wear a dress.
Yeah, dress and heels.
How about heels?
Don't forget the heels.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're one up on them.
Yeah.
And Gina, what are you seeing different in this, you know, more recent college hires or interns that are coming in? How have the attitudes changed and the dynamics changed for them, and how they've grown up because they've had this generation that's preceded them?
Yeah, you know, and it's funny, we have this dinner time conversation all the time. You know, oh, they're lazy, this generation of work in the workforce or joining the workforce. And they're really, you know, I think most of them, you know, or a good portion of them that are pursuing college degrees have seen their parents make a lot of sacrifices, right? And maybe not be at every sporting event or because they're traveling for work and trying to, you know, put food on the table. And, you know, I think that they're much more conscious of work-life balance, which I can appreciate, but they're also very efficient workers. And I think, you know, you do see some tendencies. I know my team will tell you from our interns, you know, we have male and female summer interns, and they're all, you know, it's the first day, very shy, introverted. They don't, you know, they're uneasy. And then a week or two in, and they let that guard down. But I think, you know, we've had first generation college students as our female college students as our summer interns, and to see their personality really, you know, shine through by the end of the summer, where they have more confidence and they find their voice. And again, they're not necessarily around people with professional degrees, or, you know, their parents or you know, come from different fields, and they're getting this exposure. And it's, you know, I think that I have a lot of hope for the new generation. I think they're going to teach us a lot of things that we should have learned a long time ago. That, at the end of the day, what do you want on, I'm sure Geri hears this all the time, but what do you want on your tombstone, right? And do you want to be, it's Gina Piscatelli, she was a fine banker. No, I want it to be that, I was a good mother and and a loving wife and a good friend. That you have to look at what's most important. So I think you have to, I think we're learning a lot from this new generation coming in the workforce.
And so I wonder, do you recommend calling out misogyny when you see it? Because it does happen in my line of work a lot with, I hate to say it, older white men typically are the culprits. But what has your experience been, and do you recommend calling that sort of behavior out in the moment?
Absolutely. I have had opportunities, sadly, to do that, where I was, pregnant, or actually I was just returning from having my second child, and my new male boss said to me, maybe you don't want to, I didn't think that you wanted to continue to travel the same way you did. And I said, well, why did you think that? And, you can't ask me that. Right. And then, and I would continue and I brought in HR into that conversation. And I think that his intention wasn't necessarily criminal, but he needed to understand that wasn't an appropriate question to ask me, and that his assumption should be I'm back, and that my role should just continue as it did before. And it was an education. And I think that that's really what it's about. It's speaking up to there's not always a maliciousness or a criminal behavior behind it. But if we don't speak up and educate someone to say, that's really not appropriate for you to say. If I was, took paternity leave as a man and I came back, why would you think that my role would change? So I think that was my approach, and I'm always, I am much quicker to think on my feet and not get flustered as I did in my youth, and to say something, would you say that to my male counterpart? Right. And then, it might make them feel a little uncomfortable, but it gives them pause to say, you know what, I probably wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I think you can move forward, and people should just be considering that before they speak, if we have the moment to think before we speak.
I agree with her. Otherwise, it'll just escalate. Yeah. I mean, if he does it, they could be, like you said, very innocent. Mm-hmm. But if you point it out, then they think about it, and it won't go to another level where it does end up in a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So you have to call them out on it. My daughter sure would.
But do you get that the way you express yourself has to be different than the way they express themselves?
Yeah, you have to be more careful with our language.
You're being accused of being, you're not calm. People tell me that all the time.
Yes.
Calm down.
Calm down. We're always emotional.
Tell me that if I was a man?
No.
Yeah.
No. It's true. It happens all the time. Yeah, we're emotional. We're aggressive. I ask for money, I'm aggressive. My husband asks for money from a family, and it's, good businessman. I get, she's not compassionate enough in her job. She's asking for the funeral money. We get paid by the day of. You can't undo the funeral, can't unring the bell. We get paid, period. I ask, I'm uncompassionate, I'm too businesslike, I'm this, I'm that. My husband asks for money, they write the check, they give the credit card, they don't think twice. That's the way it is. Mm-hmm. So you do. I have to be careful of my wording because I am accused often. Yep.
Yeah, and I think for me, in my line, what I just do if I am approached or, something said to me that I kind of wait till after the meeting. Sometimes I'll call out in front. It just depends on who's in the room. You have to read the room as well, too. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I may take a step back and just take note in my mind or just jot it down. And after the meeting, I'll just pull that individual to the side and say, the comment that you made was truly inappropriate, and I'll just, again, pull it to the side. You have to read the room to see who you're around sometimes. Yeah.
Plus, if you take them aside, like she says, they don't feel like they have to defend themselves in front of everyone. Mm-hmm. Now they can take a moment to calmly reflect what you're saying, right? We don't want to put them on the spot where they feel, Unless they did it first. Yeah. We're better.
All right, thank you to our panelists at NJBIA's Women in Business Leaders Forum, and thank you for joining us on NJBIA's Minding Your Business. We'll see you next time.